Hello and welcome to episode 50 of Nintendo
Woohoo!
Therapy, a show about the latest Nintendo news and rumors, as well as a celebration of all things Nintendo. My name is Kevin. With me this week to talk about likes, dislikes, Pokemon trikes is Sean.
I'm just happy to be on two podcasts now that have reached 50 episodes.
I think we've done more than I think our other shows hit 50.
Oh yeah, we're way past it now.
Anyway, Harrison's also
this is
here.
a milestone.
I'm also here. I'm only on one podcast, but hey, we're halfway to 100, and I don't think there's a trike in a rail shooter. So you said Pokemon trikes, but
I thought it had 3 wheels. No, I don't know.
does it have 3 wheels?
I'm going to get a picture up right now.
Now you're making me question.
I just want to
everything.
thank you all for joining me in the rainbow cloud this week.
Yeah, I'm happy.
Good to be here.
I'm happy to be here. Let's reflect. I guess
It does have 3 wheels.
Oh, there's
it does have 3 wheels. I'm sorry about messing up your opener. That was pretty good then. Pokemon. That was really good. Well, a 3-wheeled rail.
To be fair, it does change what it is depending on the level. Like they're jets on one level, and they're like I think it just inflates on the water, stuff like that. So
you got way more into it than me.
Yeah, but that's more for like the end of the episode. So
yeah, we got some crazy looking back to do.
yeah. And before we look back, I just read this thing you put in the notes, Harrison, and I do want to talk about it. So I love to talk about anything Switch 2, even if it's repetition, because I love when you go back and listen to all old podcasts and they try to predict tech stuff. So like, hopefully someone's listening to this right now, like 3 years from now, and they're like, oh, they had no idea what the Switch 2 was. They thought it was going to be called the Switch 2? What a bunch of fools. Anyway.
Morons.
I want to read this because I think it's interesting. In a translated article, the Taiwanese Economic Forum reported that the next console will come out second half of next year. So I guess 2025. I still think it's going to be this year. It will be a $100 increase, so $400, due to increased costs from suppliers, but still a competitive price point at $400. Specs include NVIDIA's. I don't know.
NVIDIA's NVIDIA's T239 processor, 8 gigs of RAM, and 64 gigabytes internal storage. I made an error, Kevin. When I said second half of next year, I meant this year.
Oh, okay.
I think it might.
So then I kind of do believe most of this. The $400 price point, I totally believe, because it's only $50 more than the Switch, and this will be a new system.
I'm gonna, in solidarity with Momo, go with the 500.
I don't think they're gonna charge that for a system that's gonna be this outdated.
Well, according so it's in Taiwanese, so it's a little bit difficult. But
especially money.
According to what was put out in the article, they're thinking that they're going to make a $400 price point to adjust for the price of the suppliers, but also make up with software sales, which Nintendo always does. So again, this is speculation, even though it does come from like an official supplier, like source. But who knows? I believe it. Like 400 for a system that's going to be basically as powerful as like a portable PS4. The part that I would be surprised about is it's supposed to have LCD, which I thought, okay, they're going to do LCD. They're going to do LCD, and then they're going to drop an OLED model $50 more a year later or something. But
Definitely.
100. But if it's at 120 hertz, running most like PS4 level games is going to look really, really good on hopefully a widened LCD, like no bezels or anything like that. So, and also having 64 gigabytes of internal storage is so typical Nintendo that I don't even want to like
Yeah.
discuss it very much.
And it'll be on two 32-bit, 32 gig cards. It'll be spread out across two.
I don't want to hear from the people that are like, oh, like I already have a micro SD, just put, no, like guys, like it's so cheap for Nintendo to just like put 256 in the console. It's like it would be so cheap for them just to put like 400 in there, like. But
well, they have a licensing thing, right, with the SD cards. Like right now.
Yeah, I guess.
So I'm guessing that's part of it.
Yeah, I mean, I understand why. It's just annoying,
Well, this may be all illuminated by next week when I think we all texted about this. I think we're going to do our Switch 2 predictions next week. So we'll table this and maybe there'll be more to talk about. Maybe more news. Our main event.
I want to get into the history.
Yeah.
You made me do homework.
Our main event for our 50th episode, I thought I wanted to do something that touches on all of Nintendo's history. So just the first thing that popped into my mind, we're going to go through every single Nintendo system and we're going to say something we liked and something we disliked about each system, give a nice little history lesson on Nintendo here. We're going to start with the NES though. We're not going to start with, I know Nintendo technically had these little like home machine things before. What was it called? It was like, they each came with like 4 games on them. But anyway,
they were like, have them. We didn't have them.
Yeah, they were only in Japan.
I just like that exactly. We're giving affirmations to inanimate objects.
So the NES, we can go in.
Is that an important one?
Yeah. So I'll start off with that one, I guess. It was released in July of 1983. I'm going to just do Japanese release dates for all these just because that's when it came into the world. But
okay, that's fair.
Release that might be an American release date actually because they had the Famicom. I don't know. July 1983. I couldn't even decide on one. Like it's just like, how about it saved the gaming industry? Foundational building block of my childhood, starting point for every major Nintendo franchise. Just pick one. Like there's so much to like about the NES.
That's all I went with, was just started this whole thing.
Yeah,
like that's why we're here. So
yeah. For me, it's too many iconic, important moments for me. I wrote down just like, like garage sale finds. I'm a bit younger than you guys, so for me, this like I came in. Like I was basically alive when this was the previous generation, and the previous generation felt extremely popular at the time. I don't know if that's accurate or not, but it sure seems like people were playing NES in like the early mid 90s a lot still.
Well, yeah, because there were parents who didn't understand why they even needed to buy a Super Nintendo.
Right. So this wasn't a like or dislike, but this was also the beginning of moms calling any game system a Nintendo.
Yeah.
And
so that's to blame.
And so to this day.
Yep.
I had a lot of experience with like a lot of different game mechanics and like using Game Genie for the first time.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
With the booklet built into the Game Genie.
Yeah. I would actually use the Game Genie because you wouldn't have to.
Oh, wait, that was the Game Boy one. Sorry.
You wouldn't have to press the Game Genie down, so it would actually play games better. At least for me, so I would just use a Game Genie just to load in games that were dirty. Speaking of which,
I think that's a good way to segue into the dislike. Yeah, the machine was unreliable. Was my dislike. Like, You remember when you would have all your little tricks? Like, I remember we had like a book that was like just thick enough that you would put it in above the game so it would stay pressed down and play a little better.
Oh sure. Well, I had a neighbor for a little while, and I remember like he was from Korea, and he had an NES. And what he would used to do is he would take his Game Genie and he would spit into it. And then like when you would load up the game, this is really nasty. Like you would see the spit stains on the cartridge on the TV.
What?
It's
Oh wow,
yeah, like you
that's a
like you would
wow.
actually see the spit like on the cart, like when you like saw it on the TV, and it's like looking
That,
back, it's so like
that's a
it's so you know.
image I never thought that I'd. Yeah,
But
wow.
it's for you guys now.
That's my dislike.
I know about it, you know. My only dislike on here, I'd never finished Mario Brothers 3 until I had save states.
Yeah.
For me,
So
yeah.
I guess my dislike is similar because I never owned an NES. So my dislike was getting to play Super Mario Brothers for 2 minutes and then waiting 25 minutes for the person who owned the system to play like 8 levels and die.
Oh yeah, remember that? Remember when
The
you go
worst
over a
thing in the
friend's
world.
house and like some friends didn't really pick up on social cues and you would go over their house and just
Yeah.
watch them play video games?
It's like, this is fun. It's like, what do you mean you don't want to
Oh
come
no, I
over?
gotta show you this
Well,
part. Oh no, I gotta show you this. I gotta show you this. It's like, why don't we just play the game, dude?
it's a multiplayer game. Yeah, I know, but
I meant to do
yeah.
that
So that
every time they
that
die.
was that was my negative.
All right, is that everyone's NES? I lost track.
Yeah, that's everybody's NES.
Yeah.
So
On to the Game Boy. Game Boy came out April 1989, and in my mind, it came out after the Super Nintendo, so that was crazy for me. But
really?
yeah. Well, really, that I remembered it that way, or really?
No, that's how you remembered it. It's interesting.
I mean, it's only a year. It's a couple of months different, so they came out about the same time. Anyway, maybe I just got mine after the Super Nintendo. That's probably what happened. Probably got mine in like 91. But anyway,
We're going
Mike's. Yeah. Just like the Nintendo, my like for this was that so Nintendo was the first home console. I mean, sorry, Nintendo wasn't the first home console, but it was the machine that defined what a home console should be. And I think the same could be said for the Game Boy. The Game Boy wasn't the first portable gaming machine, but it defined what portable gaming should be.
Yeah, I had a similar like that. It was kind of like the first dedicated. Hey, this is what it could be.
Yeah, I didn't have Game Boy until Game Boy Color, so I'm gonna kind of group these together a little bit. But I will say
that's fine.
that like my love for portable gaming has never wavered after having Game Boy, whether it's been Game Boy, PlayStation, even having like Game Gear growing up, and like other things like that. But and also like Game Boy was the first Nintendo, like the first big Nintendo accessory console I can remember. Like there were so many
everywhere.
Yeah, there were so many officially licensed Nintendo products for Game Boy, along with so many different like color variants and different styles that you could have. That I'll talk a little bit later about other systems, about how I really appreciate Nintendo being able to take risks with some consoles and being critical when they're not taking risks with other consoles. And my dislike, too difficult to play under a blanket. It's too difficult to be sneaky with it.
You just had to get the light accessory.
The warm light, yeah.
Exactly. I'll talk more about Game Boy Color, but that would be it for me.
So my dislike has come more in the recent years as I've played like retro game collections, and it's just Game Boy games, original ones at least, feel too contained. It's almost like the screen is moving around you. So
yeah, that's a good way to put it. That's almost the same thing I said. I said the games aged the worst out of any Nintendo system. I wrote some of the games I grew up loving are almost unplayable by today's standards.
Yeah, because like obviously Tetris is fine, but like I don't think it was actually on when we talked about Metroid 2, but like I don't know, stuff like that just plays weird, so it's almost like you're not controlling a game, if that makes sense.
Because the character sprite sometimes takes up way too much of the screen because they had so little screen to work with, and very few games could find that balance.
Yeah, and that's the thing we noticed when we were going through the Turtles Game Boy games.
Yeah.
Like, they got better as they went, so they kind of got away from that. But that was really the only negative I had.
Well, what's better than a Nintendo? A Super Nintendo. November 1990. I liked that it took all of Nintendo's major first party titles and improved upon them like 1,000%. Super Metroid, leagues above Metroid. A Link to the Past is just Legend of Zelda on steroids. I guess the only argument that didn't happen for is their main guy Mario, because Mario Brothers 3 to Super Mario World isn't as big a leap as the other franchises. But other than that, most of them. And then you got like new Nintendo franchises too, like Pilot Wings and stuff.
So my favorite for it is just it's my favorite console. Like, that's my like,
For sure.
and that's just how it is. My dislike is that I traded it in. I really wish I had kept it because we had like 47 games or something. I'm like, I still could play that now.
Sean, our cards match again because that's what for dislike. What I wrote is this is probably my favorite system. It's the hardest to think of something I dislike. So I'm going to go with the start and select buttons always felt a little gummy. That's all I could come up with.
That's really specific, but okay.
How about you, Harrison?
Well, I'm kind of on the other end because this is the one system I didn't have growing up. Because
okay.
we had NES, we had Genesis, and then we skipped right over it. I do.
Oh, so you were one of the. You've already got a 16-bit console,
right, and I think it's also because like I think, for example, like because I had a lot of games growing up. I think if I was a little bit older, I think I would have had Super Nintendo. But like, for example, I remember like we got a Genesis because they used to be like $100, you know, like in the 90s, you know, like, and it probably came with like the Lion King game that you like killed yourself with, you know?
The Dark Souls of Disney.
Yes. Right. I meant that metaphor. I meant that figuratively, of course. But I do have lots of memories of playing it at friends' houses or like my parents used to like drop me off at like one of those like public pay by the hour daycares, which were always like horrible, but they would have like old game systems. And I gotta say SNES, it's funny, I think the most important part for me is the fact that I grew my appreciation for Mario Lost Levels, which I know is not an SNES game, but it's just the system that I played it on, playing the
because that was really the first time we could play it.
Yeah, playing Mario All Stars. SNES is the top retro system that I would jump into if I were jumping into retro games, whether it be like Earthbound or Chrono Trigger. There's just a huge library that I have either gone back to or I haven't touched yet. So
okay, and now everybody's real favorite Nintendo system,
the unsung hero.
Yes, July of 1995 saw the Virtual Boy hit shelves. And when I put these systems in order here, this illuminated something for me. Because, again, just remembering things wrong, I always thought it was weird that as late as 1998, Nintendo was releasing the Game Boy Color. And I've seen people criticize the Game Boy Color wasn't like an advanced enough system by 98 standards. So now it makes sense. Like in my memory, the Virtual Boy was after the Game Boy Color, I think. I don't know. Not 3 years before. And
no, that makes sense.
Now it makes sense why they had to go with the Game Boy Color, because they basically wasted all their research on a new handheld system on this thing, and they had to start over. So the Game Boy Color was like a patch. It was like, okay, we'll put out a color Game Boy until we can come up with the next new system.
The Game Boy Color was the proto Wii U.
Yeah, exactly. But anyway, Virtual Boy, I completely forgot that this was pre-Game Boy Color. Because I also remember this being criticized for not being color. So I think that's where that like got mixed up.
Okay.
And anyway, it's a gimmicky system, but it's a fun gimmick. And I think Wario Land is still a banger. these
Oh
games
yeah,
should come to Switch Online, even if it's just the like 5 best ones. Like you could do Wario Land, Jack Bros, Mario Tennis, Terra Boxer, Vertical Force. That's 5. Galactic Pinball would
and
be nice
Mario
too.
Clash.
Mario Clash. See, there you go. You could have a dedicated channel for this. Solid titles for Switch Online.
So my like for it is it has Mario Clash, one of my favorite Mario games, and I think that game leaned into the gimmick really well.
Yeah, so did Wario
And
Land. A lot of jumping back and
yep,
forth in the foreground.
and that's kind of when that started because I know like Mario Wonder and a lot of other ones do that now,
Mm-hmm.
but I feel like that's where that started. And then my only dislike for it is that the 2-player wire attachment got canceled before it was ever even a thing.
Dude, we are on the same wavelength tonight because my dislike is that the key problem with the Virtual Boy is without the 2-player games ever coming out, it's very
Yeah.
antisocial. Like you can't hang out with your friends and play because they can't
Nope.
even see what you're playing. So
So yeah,
and
I was just like, oh,
even if you did get that wire, think about it, it would still kind of feel isolated because you got to look into that visor. So you'd be
yeah,
too.
but I mean, you know how fun Mario Tennis would have been like that?
Oh, for sure. But at the same time, it's like there's something that's something about that that's like in between couch co-op and online play because you're not actually looking at the person. You know, you're sticking your head in a virtual world there. So I don't know.
I'm really curious on Harrison's for this.
Yeah.
I don't have any. This is not a system I had or played. I don't know.
Okay, I
mean,
didn't think it was.
yeah. The only thing I had, and I love listening to this. The only thing I had was I spend a lot of time just daydreaming about what Nintendo does right now, as far as like AR and VR goes. I know it's a bit related,
yeah.
but that's for another episode. I think. I just often think about because people at Nintendo, of course, are working on VR. I just want to know.
Oh, of course.
I just want to know what that's going to be like, and will Nintendo be able to remain in this time period? I don't know what I'm trying to say, but like, will they be able to keep up with the technology and not just make another like Nintendo Labo or whatever it was called?
I think if the Virtual Boy was in
another-
color, it would have been a huge success.
It would have done better.
They just ran out
but
of time.
I think Virtual Boy might have my favorite like marketing campaign Nintendo's ever done because it was like post-apocalyptic.
Well,
Like,
and they also
for
marketed
reason.
it as a portable system, which is absurd because you
Right.
have to play it on that stand. And I don't know if there were plans for like a headset, like what do you call it? Peripheral.
I had like I don't know if it was official, but I had like a bag so I could put everything in the bag to bring it place. Yeah.
No, I'm talking about to wear it on your head, like as an actual visor, because you couldn't even do that.
I don't know if that was a pretty bulky visor. I don't know if that would have even been comfortable.
Moving on in Nintendo history. So the next system they released is another big one in their history, and for the right reasons this time. The Nintendo 64 came out in September of 1996. And my likes for this is it's the first step into modern gaming. And, first time you see what games are still turning themselves into. Like it was almost like this was a new first generation of systems.
I agree. My like was just the 4-player in the same room idea.
Ooh, that's a good one.
Yeah.
That was just so great, and I miss it so much.
Yeah.
And it's funny, my dislike is just, it's been remedied, but my dislike is that the games really only play well if you have the original hardware or the controller. And it's like that's the only game system I can think of where that's like a drawback, is if you don't have the N64 or the controller for the online service, you're going to have a heck of a time trying to play the games.
Right. I thought this was a system that had many risks that were taken that I thought worked out great, and I love when this company takes risks on their systems. I think they produced a lot of games that are forever iconic, but unfortunately, but unfortunately have not aged well. I'm very understanding because like there's never been a bigger transition. There's never been more changes within one generation of gaming than during the PlayStation, Nintendo 64 era.
Oh yeah.
And my biggest dislike, and I'll keep it short, is that I this system has way too much revisionist history from people our age, especially online. And sometimes I feel like I want to be on Reddit. I just want to tell people to just move on. Sometimes, just like
What do you mean by that?
there's good game like there was good games then. There's good games now. I feel like I'm getting to be the age where like I'm having certain friends. This is not Reddit related, I guess, but certain friends, I guess, where they said like, "Man, remember the days when there used to be good games?" They're like, like I think every generation has like good and bad games. Every generation has good and
So
bad. Has good and bad music, good and bad art. Um,
so kind of rose tinted glasses for like the entire library of N64.
yeah, yeah,
Well,
because
that's
I want
actually
people.
my dislike too. My dislike is that it is the small library, and I get what you're saying because I feel like the Nintendo 64, every game is either treasure or garbage, and there's not much in between. There's like 20 solid titles that hold their own, but the entire rest of it is almost unplayable. So it's like people remember those 20, it might even be less than 20. I'm just going to give them the benefit of the doubt. But they
Well,
remember
yeah,
that's
because
those small like S tier games and forget
so
about all
I,
the garbage.
I've gone through the list of everything released for it to kind of figure out, all right, what's left for this like online service. I don't even know if there's 10 other games left to put on there. There's the 6 rare games that haven't been put on there, and
Sure.
then a handful of other stuff that makes sense,
I
like
want to
Quest
see
64 or something.
I want to Quest 64 could come. I don't know if they get along with Nintendo still, but I want to see they make Ratchet and Clank now. I can't think of the name of the studio, but anyway, they had a pretty decent platformer on there. Robot Rocket on Wheels was pretty decent. I
Okay,
don't think
okay.
Glover has
But
come yet. That's a
yeah, I could see that maybe, but yeah, there's not that many like what's on the online right now. There's not much left they can add to it.
yeah, for
So,
sure.
Yeah, I think just people take things that are like, is it an important console? Yes. Did it have some of the most iconic games? Yes.
I
I've said
think
on
this is
here.
exactly what I'm always trying to say about Ocarina of Time. Like, was it
Yeah,
great for the time? Yes. But do we
mm,
have to keep worshiping it? Like, no.
yeah. Like I said on here, like multiple NBA teams will use the pause screen music from GoldenEye when they're doing a play review. Like, like
oh really?
yes, like the do do
That's
do do
weird.
do 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 do.
Yeah,
Like I mean,
and that's it.
it's a bop.
That's another game where it's like at the time, yeah, I get it, and it was a big deal. They got it on the online,
Yeah,
but it hasn't held up as far as gameplay.
yeah. So like, I think like, and when I've loved doing this kind of like this activity we're doing today because like for example when I was like thinking about like Game Boy memories, I was thinking about like like going to like department stores in the holidays, it's snowing outside, you're looking at games, you're looking at the new system, you're looking at all the colors, and there's lots of strong
Hmm.
feelings that you get with nostalgia that I totally understand, but like we got to move on, I just
Exactly. And we got to
sometimes you just
move
got to move
on
on.
in the list.
Yeah.
So next was the Game Boy Color because the Virtual Boy was supposed to be there. Like they were thinking into
There's
1998, oh, we'll still be making Virtual Boy games, and they had to course correct. So
yep.
they put out the Game Boy Color. My like is the colors, Duke, the colors.
Oh, there you go. We get the same like.
There's a dated
That's what I had.
reference.
Is
It's like you two are best
I
friends or something.
It's weird because I purposely didn't look at what he had written, but no, that was the best thing about it to me is all the different colors it came in.
And I keep using the word gimmick, but they were able to use that gimmick really well. Like they re-released Link's Awakening with bonus dungeons that you needed to see the colors for, and just little things like that.
Yeah.
Or even when they'd be like, "Oh, here's a yellow Game Boy that comes with Donkey Kong Country for Game Boy." Like they were really good at that.
Yep. And you could add like a weird color palette to non-color games as well.
Which is cool because either Retro Collections or the Game Boy Online does it too. I think you can do Game Boy Color, so that's kind of cool. My only dislike is I never owned one.
My dislike is it wasn't really a step forward outside of adding the colors to the games. It was kind of still the same games, just in color now.
It was like, hey guys, here's a Band-Aid.
And it's 1998. Yeah, we should have had something more. It didn't even have a backlight, which I have a funny story about Nintendo portable systems and backlights when we get to the Game Boy Advance.
Yet?
No, it didn't.
Wow.
Nope.
Yeah.
I mean, it doesn't surprise me now that I know how the company kind of goes.
More on that when we get to the GBA.
Game Boy Color was my first Game Boy, and I did go back and I did buy like older ones because I found older ones for like again at garage sales or wherever it might be.
Yeah.
I have to bring up this point, and it's very, very important. So in my elementary school years, which was like 95, 2001, by far the most important game, in my opinion, by far, is Pokemon Red and Blue. No game like people will want to bring up like Ocarina of Time, GoldenEye. Like no, by far this was the most important, biggest game of that time. When I say everyone was playing it, like every child was playing it, it's true. I mean, it became an issue at our school. I'm pretty sure we had Pokemon. I'm pretty sure we had no Pokemon rules back then.
Yeah, Ocarina of Time was
that.
like a successful video game. Pokemon was a phenomenon. Like you could compare it to Ninja Turtles, which our other podcast, it was like the same type of thing.
It was the MCU of gaming.
Yeah.
It was a cultural phenomenon that once it hit the States, it took off like crazy because I mean it wasn't Pokemon Red and Blue. It was the N64 games. It was the anime. It was the trading card. It was the trading card game.
It was everything.
It was just and the majority of people, like so many people like me, had all of it. Like if it was Hey You Pikachu on N64, we were playing it. I have to bring that up. Like when I think Game Boy, I think Pokemon. So yeah, for sure.
I can definitely see that. Yeah.
Did you have a dislike?
Too difficult to play under a blanket. I already said that.
Oh yeah. Okay.
No.
So not.
No backlight.
Not enough of an upgrade, but it looked nice.
No backlight. I probably haven't played as many Game Boy Color games if I like go through my library than like someone else. I don't know. But I don't know. I love Game Boy. Like such an important console for me. Like every other portable console after that followed it, came from this influence. I think
right.
So the backlight story. Now that the next system is Game Boy Advance, came out in March of 2001. I just always found this story interesting. I don't know if anybody else does, but I thought we should put it here. Everybody wondered when the Game Boy Advance came out, why it didn't have a backlight at the time, because even like
that didn't have one either.
No, it didn't. So even the Sega Game Gear was capable of it. So why doesn't this thing have it? And Nintendo insisted it wasn't possible to affordably put a backlight into the Game Boy Advance, and they also claimed it would drain the system's battery too quickly. Then, about a year and a half into the Game Boy Advance's life, so like somewhere around 2002, a college student was kind of sick of the lies and started offering to, this was when the internet was really taking off. He was offering to mod people's Game Boy Advance systems, and he basically found a way to backlight it, and you could send him your Game Boy, and he would put the stuff in, and you'd have a backlit Game Boy. And Nintendo ended up using his technology to make the Game Boy Advance SP. And I have no
Oh, I
idea.
thought you were gonna say they sued him into oblivion.
Well,
Yeah,
that's
and
what my
he was
next
never
sentence.
found again.
That's what my next sentence was going to be. Is I have no idea if he was ever paid, but
Okay.
they used his technology to make the SP. Do you remember how, like, it's funny because I love the look of the original Game Boy Advance. And I might end up buying a modded one someday because they're on Instagram and they're gorgeous. But when you remember when the SP came out, that was considered like cool looking tech. Like people were like, "Oh,
Yeah.
that's amazing looking." And now it looks
flips.
so ridiculously like outdated, like old technology. It doesn't look cool at all, and the original design looks so much better. But anyway, so my likes, I'll go with that. The look of the system, I like a lot about the Game Boy Advance. It's a really, really good system. Dislikes, I got 2. So it's supposed to be a portable Super Nintendo, but they're missing buttons, which came into play when they would port Super Nintendo games onto it. So that's a dislike.
Yep.
And the tiny cartridges were easily damaged, even more so than Game Boy games, I feel. So there you go.
So one of the things I've been thinking of that Harrison brought up, so I've been playing Minish Cap. I'm on like the 3rd dungeon, but I was wondering how on earth anyone played it on a Game Boy Advance when Link was shrunk, because I'm like, oh my god, I can barely see him on the Switch screen. But my like, so this was the first handheld I owned. I think it was an SP. And my dislike was this was the beginning of console redesigns.
Yeah.
So even though the first one I
that
had
definitely
was the
set the trend
redesign
for the 5DSs we would get.
yeah, so I was like, oh, this is when this started. So awesome.
But it's a flip phone now.
I disagree with you, Kevin. I like designs of both of them quite a lot.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, it's not a disagreement. It's just a different preference. And I do see quite a few SPs or modded SPs in the wild now. I don't know if it's because they're compact or people actually do like the flip design of it. If I had to pick, I'd go with the original one, which is what I had. I had the Spice Orange GBA, which was a really popular colorway with like the GameCube era.
Okay.
I found one in my city, in my small city. I found one imported that came with the original box. It was about $500.
Oh, wow.
About $500. I don't know what the condition it was in, like if it was like pretty new. But also like you, Kevin, I played a lot of my Game Boy games on GameCube at this point. Because
Okay. Oh wow, that is a nice color. I'm looking that up. Wow.
yeah, it was very popular with the GameCube era. And like my biggest dislike was I didn't play too many games from the GBA era because I think for me the console wars were more evident than ever in this generation, even though it really took off in the previous generation. At this point, like I was trying to play GameCube, I was trying to play Xbox, and like I had no and like leftover money at that time. I guess my biggest dislike was there was just way too much competition at this point. Like there was just a lot of games that I was playing when I think about not playing these other games.
That's fair.
And now on
It seems like a system to me too that like you'll find people that have collected every color variant.
yeah. I told you that they make custom ones on Instagram, and they're all gorgeous.
Yeah,
I want them.
So I'm sure.
Yeah, the modern ones are really cool. Like I know like Wolfden, he has a GBA that's all like metal, has like a whole like metal casing to it. Cool. And you might have SP as well. Pretty. But it's backlit. It's I mean it's gorgeous. I don't know if it plays ROMs or like just physical hardware. I'm not.
All right. Moving through.
Cubage.
Yeah, GameCube came out September of 2001. Bad timing. I never remembered that about the system.
I didn't know that's when it launched.
Well, it would have been Japan, but still. So, likes possibly my favorite controller of all time. Nintendo hasn't had pressure sensitive triggers since this system, and there's something so satisfying about games that have that mechanic where like one click charges and then another full squeeze shoots the trigger. I really like that, so I'm going with the controller.
So I didn't put this as my like or dislike, but it might be my favorite game system name. I don't know. I just like GameCube, but my like was that the GameCube pretty much got all the third-party games that Sony and Xbox were getting. And I know for a long time after that, that was not the case with Nintendo systems. So that was really cool. My dislike's gonna anger you, but I think it's the worst controller Nintendo's ever.
We've been so in sync the whole time. No, I've got a dislike that should be everybody's dislike, though. It's almost inexcusable for such a good system. So maybe you'll reconsider. Because my dislike is the memory cards never had enough memory on them. Yep. And I don't feel like this was a technical limitation. I think it was to sell more memory cards, because some games like Animal Crossing would take up a full card just for one, not even just for one game, for one game file.
Yep.
So, yeah.
Good. Yeah. That's valid, but I still think the GameCube's the worst controller.
Well, GameCube is a system, again, with lots of risk. I think people, I don't think anyone feels like moderate about a GameCube controller. Like I think no. I think people are on like they either like love it and think it's like the best controller ever, or they're like,
so they're either right or they're wrong.
I think that and the N64 share that, where it's like you either like the controller or you don't.
Yeah. I mean, for me, biggest one, Animal Crossing, but I'm not going to spend.
Oh yeah.
I won't spend too much time on that. I've said I love.
Listen to past episodes for Harrison's love of Animal Crossing.
Animal Crossing, number one for me. GameCube for sure. Everything. I'll talk on and on about it. And for me, it was a system that had a lot of games, a lot of like franchises, like either like Luigi's Mansion, which I recently went back to, Pikmin, Metroid, like lots of franchises that aren't like my favorite, or ones that I need to like play again, that were introduced to me in GameCube. I want to add a prediction. My prediction is that GameCube is the next system up for the huge resurgence. We're kind of seeing it already, and we're anticipating, of course, like Wind Waker and Twilight Princess remakes. But I think we're reaching that point.
Yeah, we're hitting the 20-year point for the nostalgia to hit.
Right. So I'm so excited about that part. My dislike.
Because us that was a college year system for us. So.
Right.
God, we're old.
My dislike is that I think the transition to CD either felt wrong or too little too late at this point. At the time I was wishing that the GameCube was more, could just do more things, like could play DVDs, which I know kind of like looking like it sounds almost ridiculous now, but I've said before, I wish Nintendo Switch had Netflix. I wouldn't use it personally, but I wish they would just have things that other systems have as well. So
that was almost like a Nintendo thing of, we'll do discs, but we're going to make them tiny.
Yes, exactly. And I want to mention also, and this has not gotten any better, and this is like the negative part of today, GameCube only had 6 online games in North America, whereas PlayStation 2 had hundreds. I don't know,
I didn't
dozens.
even know it had
It
6.
had
So,
had 6 that were online supported, which I don't even know
wow,
like if that means like they were like good online experiences. But like, I mean,
that's crazy.
PS2 and Xbox at this point had better online capabilities than Nintendo Switch does right now. Um, like or dislike
I
again.
will, yeah, Microsoft. I will give them that out the gate. They've always had a handle on the online.
Yeah, I mean,
Then
like or dislike, you might not use it, but again, I wish they would just live in the same generation with some things.
Yeah, that's fair.
the Nintendo DS came out November of 2004.
Meh.
My likes to this day, one of my top 5 favorite systems, especially if you include the 3DS.
Really?
But I don't know. We'll talk about that in a
Wow.
second. There's just something so comforting about playing a DS. I don't know. I just love the thing. I never put it into words, but just just the same thing as the
Oh,
Super
man.
Nintendo. It's in my top
Yeah,
5
yeah.
systems. I love it. That's my like.
How about you,
Sean, how
My
about
Sean?
you?
my like and my like and my dislike basically over. I like that it had like some innovation with the dual screen thing,
Yeah.
but then I don't like when games would like almost handicap themselves to be like, well, we got to use the screen.
Yeah.
It's like, no, you don't have to. It's just an option. And I feel like some games stumbled really bad with it, where they're like, oh, well, you're gonna do this, but you're gonna do like all your camera controls through the touchscreen, and I'm
And
like,
the
why would you do
microphone
that?
too, like that always felt
I
forced.
forget it had a
Hmm.
Yeah.
microphone. So-
Exactly.
I don't remember if that was the DSi. We won't include that as a separate system, but one of them. And it felt so forced.
Right.
yeah, because there were games where it's like shout this at the thing, and I'm like, what?
Right.
So,
Yeah.
yeah.
And Nintendo has never stopped doing that either.
Yep.
Like with every
Nope.
with every system, like people forget that Joy Cons actually do have an IR sensor
I
in
think
them.
the coolest use of it though was in I'm sure other games did this, but in Phantom Hourglass, there were parts where you would have something on the top screen and you would close the DS to like transfer it to the bottom screen if like it was like a stamp
Oh,
on
that's cool.
a stamp. It was like I can't remember exactly what it was. It was something to do with a map. And like it was like you were holding the
That's
map and it would transfer it to the bottom. Yeah, that was really
yeah,
cool.
and that's what I mean. Like the people, developers that used it well, it was really great. So
For me, I'll just say that I think DS I think is the biggest mystery for me when it comes to the potential future, like the potential future
okay,
releases, re-releases of these games.
More on
And
that when we do our episode of what we want the Switch 2 to have. I got
right, or
I got some stuff to throw at you. Tune in
I,
next
I
week.
I just don't know if it's gonna be like it's a mystery of like would it be like on a next generation Switch 2? Could there possibly be a time where we do see a secondary system again in Nintendo,
hmm,
considering we've seen patents in the last year that would point to that sort of thing? And what if they made a
right.
secondary system with the main idea of re-releasing some of these DS games? It's a huge mystery. And also, I don't know how I really feel about it because like if all of those things were to happen and then they're like, okay, we're gonna remake Phantom Hourglass, we're gonna remake all of the Mario Luigi games. I guess I would play it. I'd be interested, but I don't know how I really feel about it. I just don't know.
Okay, so next up, the Nintendo Wii. It came out in November of 2006, and this was the only system I couldn't really come up with anything specifically I liked about it. Um,
Okay.
because my dislike is I felt like it wasn't a big enough leap forward. It's basically a GameCube with motion controls, and the only reason it's a new system is sales and marketing. Because this could have just been, they could have just put out a motion controller for the GameCube, and it would have been the same thing.
Uh my like's probably ridiculous, but the fact I could finally play light gun arcade games
Oh
like
sure.
accurately,
Yeah.
was so nice. Like that was my favorite thing about it. But my dislike, and this is something that has carried to the Switch, is trying to connect wireless controllers to the system.
Yeah.
That's very
Oh
true.
my god.
Very true. Yeah. 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 I see. It's not a. It wasn't a huge upgrade at the time. I think it was a good price point. Like, was it $200 when it released? I remember it being a
It
good
was,
price point.
yeah.
250?
Yeah,
No, yeah.
whatever it might be.
I
Two
want to
hundred.
say 250.
It was a good price. It was a good price point that came with an iconic packed in game that never
Oh
changed
yeah.
throughout its life cycle. I would say my positive is that although it wasn't a big upgrade, like Nintendo did a really good job with having certain things feel good, whether it was like the
Mhm.
haptic feedback when you like were to like scroll and click certain things, the different sounds
Yep.
that you would get in the menu. It's just like I think they anticipated making something that they knew was going to like stick in people's heads and like kind of be
Mhm.
I don't want to say iconic, but like memorable in the future. But again, it wasn't a huge upgrade. It was just a newer system, which was less expensive than the other newer systems. Also,
I'd give Wii iconic just because of the amount of people it hit.
right? I
Yeah, I'll
mean,
put that as my like. It expanded gaming to new audiences. There's
yes.
my like.
I mean, I will say like outside of Nintendo Switch during COVID, I've never seen so many people play video games. Like
Yeah.
so many different people. Like
Right.
um and Switch in 2020 was just different. I mean, it's just a different time. Also,
Yeah, because I remember nursing homes were getting Wii's just for Wii Sports and
well,
all sorts of stuff like that.
directly related to that, this is very important. If you look up Nintendo Therapy on Google, the majority of the results are people using the Wii, either doing physical therapy, occupational therapy,
Oh wow,
nursing homes. So do we?
that's really cool.
So do we want to become just a Wii podcast?
Nope.
No, no, no. It's
It's been
okay.
50
All right.
episodes till you brought that up, Harrison.
Oh,
It's too late.
all right. All right. Okay. Never mind. Never mind.
The 3DS came out February 2011. I don't know if we have to talk too much about the 3DS. It's basically, I liked all the
I
DS
mean,
systems. I bought the DS, I bought the DSi, I bought the DS XL, I bought the 3DS, I bought the 3DS XL, I bought them all. Um, so I'm just going to say, yeah, that version of Ocarina of Time is now my preferred way to play it. I like that they also gave Star Fox 64 and Majora's Mask some love. Dislike: for a portable system, there's a lot that can break. You can lose the stylus, trigger buttons get gunked up. I actually had to replace a limited edition Pokemon 3DS that got destroyed from sand in my backpack. So yeah,
so my like was pretty easy. For the gimmick, the games that utilized the 3D well were great. 3D Land, all that stuff, that was
yeah,
awesome.
yep,
My dislike, probably the worst launch like library of games ever.
fair.
That's fair. Yeah.
So
Although the next system up might make a run for its money.
Right, right. That's kind of an exception. I don't know if it's a like or dislike. I like that there's been no system to directly follow or replace 3DS. So I think
yeah,
3DS very much still has a place in the Nintendo universe. Where it gets a little bit sticky though, and this is also kind of just a observation criticism, is that while the 3DS is still widely used today, something that's kept it very, very popular and still relevant is the modding community, which has also
hmm
helped. It's also just helped with the video game preservation as well. It's just
oh yeah,
it's
yeah,
just something that Nintendo will never fully acknowledge. It's something that's going on. It's something that they're not going to be able to stop around the world. Um, but at the same time, modding is what is keeping the system relevant, much like how like PlayStation Vita was abandoned but has a very
yeah,
popular
yeah.
base still today. Um, So I don't know how I feel about it. It's just, but I do like that. I see a lot of people still playing 3DS.
And last up, because I think we should save our Switch thoughts for next week, because we're going to talk about what we like and dislike when we talk about what we want the two to be.
Okay, that's fair.
So,
Fair, I guess.
and we're also running kind of long. So, last up, the Wii U came out November of 2012. My likes. It's really a shame how the Wii U story turned out, because as I've said before, I prefer the home screen. I got a lot of likes. I like the home screen. It's got personality and atmosphere. It let you transfer your whole entire Wii console over. And I just loved having that map. You don't realize how you're pausing your forward momentum in games to just check a map.
To look at the map.
Yeah, until you don't have to do it anymore and you can just look down. So, and because you're literally like stopping all forward progression to be like, wait, am I going left or right? That's it. My dislike is much like the Nintendo 64 and the Virtual Boy before it. The system just doesn't have the library. And it's made even more redundant by the fact that every game worth playing for it has been released on the Switch, except for Twilight Princess and Wind Waker. So, yeah.
I mean, my like is similar to, I love the menu on the Wii U. It's that hands down the best menu of any game system. Like you said, it's just personality. I liked watching the Miis walk around, and I loved all that. So I really hope that's something that's going to come back. My dislike was calling it the Wii U.
I
feel like
I could talk for an hour.
That didn't help them at all.
Yeah, because I was working in the electronics section of Target at the time, and I could tell you firsthand that cost them sales. So many parents are like, "Oh, we already have a Wii. This isn't a Wii. It has nothing to do with the Wii. It's the next thing. We already have a Wii." Or people saying like, "Well, can I play these Wii U games on my Wii?" No, because it's not a Wii U. Like, it was just it was chaos.
So I think that is one of the things that killed that system.
Yep. This is also one that I didn't have because I was very confused by it, and I didn't have.
That's fair.
And I didn't have lots of confidence after the Wii. I mean, also I started college in 2008. Like I was doing my internship when this system came out. I remember the day it happened. I mean, like, it's like, yes. I wasn't invested in it. So I guess even though I didn't have the system, my biggest dislike was that is exactly what you said, Sean. It was just way too confusing to the consumer, coming from a company that loves to confuse their consumer base, like Super Mario Brothers 4, blah blah blah, Island 3, whatever.
Yeah.
But okay, and then I'll just include. Okay, so you said we're not going to talk about it, Kevin. My biggest like is that it led to the most important
to the Switch,
to the most important gaming system of all time.
For sure.
That's my hot take. I know we're not talking about it today.
We're gonna table that, but I'm gonna think about that.
We're gonna table
that's a bold statement.
We're gonna table it, but in my opinion, Nintendo Switch, most important system of all time. Maybe not the greatest, but the most important.
All right. We'll dig into that next time.
And concluding this week's episode is our spotlight. So we're gonna take a little look at Pokémon Snap. Came out March 21st, 1999 in Japan and July 26, 1999 in North America. It is the precursor to Pokemon Go, basically.
Okay, yeah.
And yeah, what were your thoughts playing it this week? I can remember the build up to this game and reading about it in Nintendo Power and wanting this to be a free roam game, and I feel like maybe if I didn't see it right, but I thought it was going to be a free roaming game, and I felt like it was like a bait and switch when I got it and started playing it.
So were you disappointed originally when you played it back then?
Oh yeah, and this is exactly what I'm afraid the Princess Peach game next year is going to be, and that's why I'm not getting hyped about that, because I'm like, it could very well be a game like this that you can finish the game in 2 hours, because you can finish this game in 2 hours. So that's what I'm hoping that game is not.
So my time with Pokemon Snap, and I have played the new one a little bit. I only spent about an hour with it, and it's again the controller, having the actual controller helped. I'm trying not to come down hard on it. It's like it's an interesting idea, and I get for the time. Like, oh, all right, this is like the first 3D Pokemon game, so it's a big deal. It's entertaining for a little bit, but it's pretty bare bones to the point where I was, and maybe the new one is too. I didn't play much of it, but I was kind of surprised this was like a full retail like game at the time.
Did you know?
Go.
Did you know gaming? Did you know? This did not start development as a Pokemon game.
Oh, really? I did not know
What
that.
did it start as?
It started in development in 1995 as a game where you'd be on this island taking pictures of like legendary mythical like creatures. It was just going to be like a generic photography game.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, I love Yeah.
No, wait, because I know you were disappointed. This was like the Pokemon game that came up, Harrison. So
Yeah, I mean, it's fine. This is just not a Pokemon game that I enjoy. I think receives way too much recognition. Like, so it was the first 3D. It was the first.
Okay, so it was the first.
It was the first Pokemon game with 3D sprites, but literally, like, Pokemon Stadium came out less than a month later in Japan, and came out 3 months later, I think it's June, came out 3 months later in North America.
So you can measure when I was over Pokemon, because
Yeah.
I bought this game, and by the time Stadium had come out 3 months later, I was over Pokemon, and this must have just been at like the peak of my Pokemon hype, and by 3 months later, I was over it.
So
Did you play this one at release, Harrison?
Yeah, I did. And listen, I even bought and played the new one for a little while. So I played on release because I was playing everything Pokemon at the time. But I never liked it. I never thought I never thought it looked good back then. I don't think it looks good now. And then like when Pokemon Stadium came out a few months later, I'll start. Pokemon Snap only had 63 of the Gen 1 Pokemon, where in Pokemon Stadium, you had better looking 3D sprites of all 151, and you could import your Pokemon from your Game Boy, which was the most magical part of all of it. Like, oh, I had this Pokemon in my Game Boy. I've had it for like forever. Like, we have a relationship, and now I can put it into a like literally
We have friendship
you feel
points.
like you have like a connection with this digital thing that you put into the system, and you see it in 3D for the first time, and you think, wow, like there it is.
Well,
like
I'll admit there was a charm though about seeing Pokemon in the wild when you had only really seen them as NPCs or like random encounters at that point. There was something nice about seeing them gallivant about in the high grass and stuff. And
yeah.
So you guys have validated for me. So this is by far the worst looking N64 game we've played.
That we've played. Okay, that's an important caveat.
I don't understand what happened, but it just doesn't look right to me.
Well, here's
at all.
And looking at like the Pokemon like franchises, it's interesting because new Pokemon Snap looks very good in my opinion.
Yeah, that's a really good game.
Because no surprise, it's not made by Game Genie. Like it's not made by not Game Genie.
Game Freak.
Game
Freak. Sorry, I'm still on Game Genie. Game Freak. It's like no surprise. Like the good looking like Pokemon games are not made by Game Freak. So I think this receives too much credit. Now there are like I said like. Playing it, like I remember all like the sounds and like the menu and Professor Oak dancing in the menu and everything. Like there's definitely some like cute fuzzy moments to it. And I also left a note in our notes about Do any of you remember the Pokemon Snap sticker stations that they had at Blockbuster at the time?
Oh yeah,
No.
I was gonna. I think I've told this story on the podcast, but it's like an embarrassing memory I have. You know those things you think about at night when you're about to fall asleep, and then you remember some embarrassing memory. Is
Oh yeah.
being however old we were in 1999 and going into Blockbuster and telling the Blockbuster guy like I wanted the Bulbasaur card, and him being like, I don't know what any of these are, dude. Like, which one is that? And just like, there was something that like shattered reality about that moment for me where I'm like, oh, I thought he'd be like an expert on Pokemon because he's the guy selling the Pokemon stuff. Not thinking this is just probably a teenage kid like just working at Blockbuster, you know?
Yeah.
So you were another teenage kid that was like talking about Pokemon. Oh, Secret Stations. So Secret Stations they had them in Blockbusters. They had them apparently all around the world, but
you'd bring your cartridge in and you could print your photos.
Yeah. Basically, you'd pay $3 and you'd get this card you could only use one time. You bring in your cartridge, you stick it in this little like kiosk, and then you could print off 16 stickers.
And I get the Bulbasaur card.
That you do like whatever with. And then that also led to, in 1999, they had the Take Your Best Shot contest, where the best printed photo won a trip to Australia. And then second place won like Game Boy Color and like some games. I couldn't find too much info on the winner, but according to Reddit, it was a photo of Mew, and the second round of the contest was a written essay portion, which I would have hated as a kid. I would have been like, I joined to take pictures of Pokemon, not write an
that
essay.
Kid who submitted the Mew picture probably died in Australia trying to take pictures of the critters that actually want to eat you.
Yeah, I guess so. And if it was Mew, like I don't know, like because I think Mew is like that final level where like it's just Mew. This is not a game or a genre I like. And speaking of which, besides like Sin and Punishment, are there any rail shooters that you guys really enjoy?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I used to love, I don't know about home console ones because I used to love them at the arcade, like Time Crisis, Virtual Cop.
Sure.
There was
what was
Carnival,
Area 51?
I think was one.
Yeah, Area 51 was good.
And then the one I brought up last year when we were talking favorite Wii game, the House of the Dead, that they made just for that. Yeah. So it can be
Star
a fun
Fox
genre.
Count? That's kind of
Star
a
Fox.
Yeah, that counts.
Yes, Star Fox counts.
Star Fox 64 then, all day.
The newer wasn't there a Kid Icarus game that was a rail shooter? Was Uprising? Uprising was a rail shooter. Icarus. And then
it's definitely a genre that can work if you do it well, but I could see where if the entire point is taking pictures, it kind of can lose its fun factor.
On my Nintendo backlog, I've had Panzer Dragoon like downloaded on my.
Oh, that's one. Yeah. I always see that on sale.
Yeah. So yeah.
I think ranking wise, I was a little kinder to this just because I'm not into Pokemon, so I don't have any of that attached to it. So to me, it was more of one of the interesting oddities. If you're curious what this game was like, pop it in for an hour. So I put it at 31. Like in the middle of the pack.
Does it get any bonus points for how many times you've heard us say, we're here to catch the elusive Pokemon?
Oh, I totally forgot about that.
I love that commercial.
But, yeah, I mean, it was interesting for the little bit of time I spent with it. It's hands down the most hideous N64 game we've played, so it wins on that, but I'm not into Pokemon, so it doesn't really make much impact on me one way or the other. So
where did you put it?
31.
31. Okay, so that puts it below Dynamite Heady and above Kirby's Dream Land 3.
I had pretty similar.
Yeah.
I had pretty similar. I put mine at 30, below Dreamland 3 and above WarioWare Inc. Like I put it above a lot
Okay.
of like smaller games like Yoshi, Donkey Kong Jr., like NES baseball, ice hockey, like games like that. I mean, this is 100% a game that should be on the online service and is 100% a game that you should play if you're a Pokemon fan and you also have the online service. Like, I guess I'll say I wouldn't buy the online service just to play this game. But if you're but if you're a Pokemon fan, I mean, I've said it before. Like, why not have all the Kirby's? Why not have all the Zeldas? Why not have all the Pokemon? And I have lots of theories of why we still don't have Gen 1 Pokemon on Switch. But anyways,
Me too. This does not make my top 20. I am throwing it in at 21, which puts it in a similar position of games, or a similar family of games to you, Harrison, because I have it right below WarioWare, and it's right above Castlevania Bloodlines.
Really?
I'm just not a fan of Bloodlines. I said it when we reviewed the game. I think I have a bias because I grew up playing Super Castlevania, and Super Castlevania would rank really high on this list if it were on the what's the word I'm looking for? This, not system.
The online.
No.
The SNES online.
No, there's a word. Why am I blanking on this? Service. That's the word I'm looking for. If it was on the service.
All right, so I'm wrong about GameCube controllers. You're wrong about Bloodlines. Fine.
I just don't like the Bloodlines.
You're a
well,
fool.
Not even that I don't like it. It's just I'd rather play this because I did grow up with Pokemon and I have nostalgia for this game. Whereas Bloodlines, I'm just not that keen on. Where the games I don't like start to show up are, let me scroll down my list. It's far from there. It's like almost 40 at this point where the bad games are. So Bloodlines is still in the middle.
Yes, throughout
so
50 episodes, you guys have 49 games.
There we go. Yeah. So
it's a late edition.
I think the games right here, I'd say the start of the games I don't like is what I have ranked at number 37. So 37 and down. And Bloodlines is all the way up here at 22. So that's plenty of games that I like that I ranked worse than Bloodlines.
So what do we get coming up next as I continue to finish Minish Cap?
Oh yeah. So let's roll the cosmic dice and find out what we're playing. So we're playing NES Dig Dug 2, which I didn't even know was on the service, but I can tell you my history with Dig Dug is playing a ton of it on, what was it, on Windows 98? It was on one of those, like, came with that little arcade in your start menu. Playing a lot of Dig Dug on my family computer.
Okay, Dig Dug 2, that's interesting.
And pinball? What was that pinball game? And Tetris. So yeah. Early memories. Get a little bicycle pump that you blow up monsters with. Makes sense, right?
It's kind of horrific when you really break it down. What's the most horrifically violent way this guy can kill things?
I don't know if Dig Dug 2 is like that, though. I don't know if I've played 2.
I don't know, but... I
might be like that weird Pac-Man sequel they made, which had nothing to do with goblin ghosts.
It could be. I don't know. So that'll be interesting. So we've gone from a Zelda game to a Pokemon game to an Atari arcade sequel.
Game, yeah.
So, all right.
So if you'd like to play along with the Spotlight game and send us your thoughts, email us at nintendotherapypod@gmail.com. You can find us on what used to be Twitter at Nintendo Therapy. And we are also on Instagram, but I don't update it as much as I should. But we are at Nintendo Therapy on Instagram. I think that's what we're at on Instagram. I'm sure you'll be able to find us. That shows it. Oh, now I opened my Instagram to check, and Mark Hoppus from Blink 182 is singing. I apologize. Okay, so that is our show for this week. And we will be back next week with some. Oh, we already know what we're doing next week. We're going to do Dig Dug 2, and we're going to talk about what we want to see
All
in the
things
Switch 2,
Switch.
which pretty much guarantees they're going to announce the Switch 2 next Wednesday, right before we record. So,
Oh yeah.
yeah, we're going to get our not predictions in, our wish list, I'll call it. Our Switch 2 wish list.
Yeah, it's got to be a wish list because we're not Switch 2 experts.
Yeah, exactly. Remember that. We're not experts. We're just fans, so go easy on us. Toodaloo.